Breaking news out of California. The governor there, Gavin Newsom, says he is being investigated by the Justice Department. In a social media post, Governor Newsom accuses President Trump of directing the investigation into him and his wife. The governor did not say what this investigation is about. NBC News senior justice reporter Ryan Reilly joins me now. Ryan, I know this story is late-breaking right now. What else have you learned? What else is the governor saying about this DOJ investigation?
Yeah, we know President Trump has in the past called for Newsom to be arrested, or at least said that one of his employees should think about arresting Newsom. But Newsom has come out and made clear that he thinks this is a politically driven investigation. Take a listen.
In recent days, federal agents have knocked on the doors of family, friends, and former employees, not because they found a crime, because they're simply trying to find one. Donald Trump isn't just coming after me because of my mean tweets. He's coming after me because I'm considering running for president.
And so obviously there's been a ton of cases that have raised a lot of questions that were brought against Donald Trump's political enemies, including the indictment of former FBI Director James Comey over a photo of seashells that he took on a beach. And so there are a lot of questions about whether this is along those same lines. But what we do know, and have been able to report alongside with our colleague Kelly O'Donnell here, is that this investigation isn't being run out of Los Angeles, where there's a Trump loyalist installed, but is instead out of the Central District, or rather the Eastern District of California, and could potentially stem from another investigation that was closed last month into Newsom's former chief of staff, in which that individual pleaded guilty to some crimes. So that might have sort of grown out of that investigation. But obviously, with a lot of the cases that have been dismissed that have been brought against Donald Trump's enemies, it's raising a lot of questions about what the origin of this original investigation was.
Ryan, what about the president? Have we heard anything from President Trump or from the Justice Department on this?
Yeah, we haven't yet heard from President Trump on this, but, he did make that comment last year about wanting to see Newsom arrested. And obviously, Newsom is one of the most aggressive people going after Donald Trump on social media. And that's what he sort of thinks this is all about. But because of all of these cases in the past, including, an attempted indictment of 6 sitting members of Congress over a social media video that Trump doesn't like, it does raise these general questions about, what was the origin of this investigation? Is this of merit, or is this really something that is being politically driven by the White House?
All right, Ryan Reilly with the late-breaking details. Thank you so much, Ryan.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.